I'll just keep an eye on the registrants and let anybody in that joins in late. So
sounds good.
All right. Well, I'll kick it off. As many of you know, I'm Chris Mechanic. I'm one of the co-founders here at Web Mechanics. We're the baddest performance marketing agency on the block. Super excited to be here today for our inaugural episode of the Growth Clinic. And the idea here, well, this is really part of our community building effort, an effort to reach out, to engage the local community, and speak with other marketers to learn and grow together. So the basic concept is we're going to bring, one or more experts from our side, or sometimes it might be a third-party expert. We're going to talk a little bit and present a little bit on an important topic, but we encourage engagement. So there's a chat feature. We encourage you to chat, whatever thoughts or questions that you have. And then we'll open it up, toward the end for just kind of some free-form dialogue. We see a lot, like we have over 70 active clients right now, all probably a good 40 or 50% B2B. We've got some B2C. So we're out there and we're seeing a lot. And so there's probably things happening in your world right now where you're racking your brain over it. You could run it past us and maybe just get one or two insights that accelerate your progress. Or sometimes what happens is sometimes what happens is things become unimportant, or things that you think are important right now. It's actually like, well, in the grander scheme of things, maybe I should focus more on like the ad, for instance, more so than like the targeting. But anyway, that's just one random example. So without further ado, I want to introduce our host, Ryan Baker. Ryan's our head of coaching and information products, longtime digital pro. He's cut his teeth in e-commerce. He's worked agency side. He knows B2B quite well. And I would say probably one of his core focuses and expertise is around the strategy area. And he's also very strong with paid media, with copywriting. He's pretty much a unicorn. We've also got along with us my right-hand man, Jarrett Flagel, who many of you I'm sure are very familiar with. Jarrett's been with us for a long time, coming on a decade, on the new biz and partnership side of the house, but also a digital geek in his own right, because he did start more on the client ops side. So we're super excited. Don't be shy, be chat happy. As a matter of fact, both Jarrett and I are manning the chats, and we will call out some questions. And if you feel comfortable enough to come off of mute and interact, then we'll be more than happy to do it.
Yeah, well, thanks for that really nice introduction. I don't think I've been called a unicorn by anyone other than my daughters. Yeah, basically, I want to reiterate that this is, we want this to be kind of a community event. So use the chat, engage. If you get more value from like asking questions and having those questions answered, then definitely do that. If you get more value by reaching out to each other and forming relationships outside of this event, then by all means do that. We just want this to be a valuable event where everybody can learn and grow together and benefit from the mastermind, as Napoleon Hill would put it. So as you all saw in the invitation, today we're going to talk about the top 5 growth killers that I personally am seeing in the marketplace, whether it be B2B, B2C. These are kind of just business growth killers across the board. So I'm going to start going through the list. Chris and I will maybe go back and forth, kind of riff on it a little bit and share our thoughts. Jarrett, you're of course welcome to pipe in. But any questions that pop up in your mind, just go ahead and toss it in the chat. And then if you want to elaborate or share more info, we're not going to do like a full presentation and then go to the questions afterward. What we want to do is make this really engaging and open up a dialogue around each of these points. So any thoughts, questions, whatever that come to mind, don't hesitate to put those in the chat, and we'll start a discussion. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get to the first point. And really, this is almost like the foundational atomic bomb of growth killers. And this is that businesses nowadays don't seem to have a long-term growth strategy. In marketing departments, especially, maybe C-suite has an idea of where they want to go. They've got vision, they've got mission, but all of the focus is on like, hey, let's get leads. How do we get more leads? How do we get more sales? And all of the actions that are moving toward those goals are short-sighted. You have to make money now, and you should never sacrifice money now for the hope of money later. But as you're executing all of these things, if you don't focus on a long-term strategy, then you never get those like beautiful hockey stick graphs that you see, in rare situations where it's like, oh yeah, we were just churning along and we had this growth. And then without like a major cataclysmic event, we just, it took off. Well, when things take off like that, it's a result of doing all the right things and compounding interest on those correct actions turns into that massive hockey stick. So what we tend to see is that those who think long-term, they do all the actions to get more leads, get more sales, bring in, all of the quick and easy wins, the low-hanging fruit now, but they also focus on the long game. Those companies grow and survive. So there's a study that Inc. magazine did, and Forbes published this, and I think a couple other places, showing that 2 out of every 3 Inc. 5000 companies failed within 5 to 8 years of making that list, the Inc. 5000 list. And that's the fastest growing companies in America. Generally, you have to have $2 million a year, and then over 3 years, grow 56% or more. And at the top of the list, generally, you have, 4-digit growth, sometimes 5-digit growth over a 3-year period. It's nuts. But what they found is that 5 to 8 years after making that list, even those who made the list multiple times, they either shut their doors completely, shrunk considerably, or closed, sold at a loss. So generally, they had their different theories about why that happened. A lot of people talk about the strain that rapid growth puts on a company, and definitely that's not to be overlooked. The internal strain of growing pains is pretty intense.
Yeah, well, and the reason I think for this is like, raise your hand if you're under pressure on a daily, weekly, monthly basis to get new leads. Right? Oh, that's a surprisingly small portion. I would figure it's everybody, because about 100% of our clients, roughly, give or take, maybe like 98.6, are, conversations with them involve, hey, lead flow, hey, SQL, hey, deal flow, hey, pipeline. And close to 0%, I would say, have, not zero, but a smaller percentage, I would say, have a well-articulated strategy. And we joke internally about the word strategy, because like, it can be so fluffy. So I think we could do a whole session on this strategy. But I think that the underlying thing is that as marketers, we're constantly under pressure. There's new stuff constantly. It's difficult to keep up with those demands. And so when you talk about long-term things, they're like nice to haves on that little hierarchy of needs, right? There's at the bottom food and shelter, and like, you need those leads. And at the top is like that longer term strategy.
Right.
But one thing that we've done internally with our own organization is we started following this system called EOS, which is called the Entrepreneurial Operating System. I don't know if you're familiar with Vern Harnish or the Rockefeller Habits or the book Traction, but it's basically a framework for like how to run your business. So it includes things like vision and purpose and your target market and things like that are stated one time. But it also has a framework of what they call rocks, which are like quarterly goals, basically. Scorecard metric, which simplifies like your entire massive view of all of your metrics into just like the 3 or 5 most important, and a drumbeat of meeting and communication schedules that's like really rigid and tight. I don't know if you've ever sat through long meetings that just kind of wind and meander, but like that doesn't happen ever on EOS. So one of the things that we're doing with our coaching clients is basically implementing sort of a watered down version of that to do two things. One is just clarify for the entire, or for the entire sales and marketing org and the different components, where it could say kind of what are these people working on, and then in that way you can work on things that align together as opposed to sometimes clash. But it also creates a mechanism by which marketers can push back and say, look, I've already got my rocks for this quarter, like we don't want to just go quitting on rocks midway through the quarter because there's like some big webinar that we need to promote, so it provides a I think you guys get the idea, but I'll stop there.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. A structure like that can help align everyone. You set your 1 year goal, your 3 year goals, 5, 10, whatever, and then those quarterly goals help to keep everybody on track for moving toward that. And if they don't have that clear vision of, okay, here's what I'm doing today to move me toward that goal, then you just kind of focus on like keeping your head above water, treading water day to day. Okay, how am I going to get more leads today? How am I going to get more leads today? And so the goal really, if you want to overcome this, is to focus on, well, fixing the next problem, the next growth killer I'll talk about. But yeah, you just you want to focus on getting customers ready to buy in the future, in addition to bringing in those who are ready to buy now. So, easy enough to say. So number 2 growth killer that I'm seeing is lack of customer understanding. And this is super, super broad. So I have audited a lot of growth strategies of marketing funnels, of Google Ads accounts. And I don't want to say 9 times out of 10, but 9 times out of 10, what I see is people just trying to talk to everybody, and they don't really understand the customer. And you see a lot of like persona avatar kind of guides of like, hey, put this information together and you're going to know your customer super well. You walk through the guide and it gives you a bunch of kind of surfacey information, like what kind of sandwiches does she like to eat? And it's like, okay, well that's not super helpful. But when it comes down to it, you want to know all the demographic and psychographic and firmographic information that will help you better resonate with them, understand how they think, but you want to know what problems they're experiencing and how that problem's affecting their professional and their personal lives. And if you can understand that, then all the other stuff just falls into place. It doesn't necessarily even really matter, what their age is. It doesn't necessarily matter, like budget matters. Yeah. Company size matters. If you're not going to work with somebody, under 10 employees, then yeah, you can disqualify them. But being able to speak into someone's situation, into someone's problem, and just perfectly describe their pain that they're feeling, so that everything they're seeing, everything they're reading, everything they're hearing, they're like, oh, that's right. Oh my gosh, that's right. That helps them feel understood. And those who feel understood are going to trust you as the expert, because they know, hey, you understand me, you've been there. And obviously, if you've been there and you're selling me a solution, it must be the right solution because you understand the problem.
Yep. Yeah, there's nothing like user voice. Raise your hand if you're into user voice, if you're pursuing it or collecting it actively. Total game changer. Here's a little hack, is that the salespeople in your organization almost definitely know the prospects better than the marketers, right? Because they spend all day on the phone with them. So grab some of your sales copy. Like, salespeople write great sales copy. They're not the most polished copywriters in the world, but they know the pain points. They know the objections. To Ryan's point, if you can articulate those and assuage those objections preemptively before they even necessarily come up in that subject's mind, you're way ahead of the curve. I don't want to be the dude that's always recommending books left and right, but there's an excellent book called The Ask Method, or what is that, by Ryan Levesque, Jarrett?
That's right, The Ask Method. Yep.
The Ask Method, and it lays out a very detailed but powerful method of designing surveys, where it talks about like how broad you should go versus how narrow you should go. It provides, you know, a pretty prescriptive framework of how to go about, you know, the whole process. It's a quick listen. You can grab it on Audible and probably get through it in an afternoon. I devoured it. But one of my favorite things about it is you offer an incentive for the survey, but it's an incentive that only somebody interested in your product would be interested in. So it's not, you know, $100 Uber Lyft gift card, because anybody would be interested in that. But it's a, you know, a free month of service or a free window replacement job for every 1,000 giveaway, you know, something that only someone in market would be interested in. You ask a series of questions, but one of the ways that you review the results is based on character count. So there's some open-ended questions, and you really drill into the ones with a high character count, because all things equal, high character count is more engaged, more committed, etc. So you basically heavyweight those in the responses. Anyway, it's a really good book. I would check it out.
Yep. Megan left a really great comment. I'd also suggest talking with those who manage online community management. They can predict with almost 100% accuracy how online communities will respond to messaging, ads, etc. Megan, that's a great point. You have anything to add to that, or any other things you like to?
I mean, just, you know, managing online communities, like the consumers are very vocal in how they feel about things. And, you know, as you're preparing messages to go out, we always run it by our community managers, because they can share and predict, you know, the problems that will come out of that statement or ask, or just, you know, so that way, even though we're going to post it or go out with it, we can be prepared for whatever's to come. It's, you know, kind of predictable in that sense. I mean, sometimes we get it wrong, but it is pretty uncanny.
Yeah,
that's awesome, Megan.
That's a great tip. I also really like looking at like chat transcripts and so like customer support, really any kind of long qualitative data pieces that you can get your hands on as a marketer to really understand problems, especially that people are having. And then find out, you know, how to really resonate with them on providing the solution. And Megan Webster asked a good question. She said one issue that we run into with this is discussing with sales is the whole, you know, every customer is different. You know, everybody is different. How do you get past that mindset? And she's right. Everybody is different. But she's also right in that you have to get past that mindset, you know, so really, you're not marketing to everybody. You shouldn't market to everybody. And you know, those that say everybody is different aren't necessarily thinking about even those you're serving. Yes, they're all different. You know, you can get an ICP, you know, the ideal customer persona, and everyone that fits that bill is going to be different. But they're all going to have the same problem. They're all going to be experiencing the pain in roughly the same way. And they're all humans. You know, they all fall prey to the same human psychology of, I have a problem, I want to fix it, I need to trust somebody, but I'm skeptical. And what you have to do is understand the problem and how it affects people. And you don't have to understand like, okay, what's their behavioral style? Well, this person's really assertive. So, you know, you can adjust to that on sales, but on the marketing side, if you're speaking to a lot of people, you can't necessarily account for that. So you can pick one path or another if you know that a large majority of your customers share the same type of behavioral style. But in the grand scheme of things, if you focus on the problem, you're going to resonate more with the customer.
Yep. And Ashar just shared a great insight that having access to subject matter experts is also helpful. Their sonographers are very insightful to help them to understand the perspective of a healthcare professional. So Ashar, just to for the illumination of the group, you guys serve sonographers essentially, right? So you're able to kind of tap into those subject matter experts who have that relationship sort of boots on the ground, and you're able to learn like what they're actually struggling with, their pains and challenges that way. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. Just because, again, marketers, we don't think like healthcare professionals, obviously. And so being able to kind of have access to sonographers, you really get an idea of their personality and how they are. And it's just really interesting to see them as individuals, but you see them as a group as well. And it's like you see these kind of repeated like character traits, like they're very feisty, they're intelligent, like they stick up for themselves, but you really get to understand how they are, how they operate, the things that they don't like, the titles they don't like to be called. And it really gives you insight into who they are. And so it's like the difference between like small talk and having like a really deep conversation with someone, right? Like small talk, you can kind of develop a connection, but with having a deeper conversation, you get to know who the person is. And I think it's just kind of having a conversation with someone. Do you want small talk or do you want to have a deeper conversation? So it just, it's been invaluable. So
yeah, that's super good insight. And to that point, I would say, for those that don't have access to subject matter experts that are their ideal customers, if there are, depending on live events that are happening, if there are conferences that you can go to, or even virtual summits or whatever that are for associations that are in your target ICP or any sort of like trade publications, things like that. You want to be able to immerse yourself in that world. So if you can get in and around them and start talking to them, then you kind of get that same benefit that Ashara is talking about with the subject matter experts, and being able to really understand just how they think, how they act, what their priorities are, what their problems are, and how they experience those.
Absolutely. And I'll just close out this point with a couple tools that you guys might want to check out. So if you guys aren't familiar with conversational intelligence tools like Gong, we use it at Web Mechanics, highly recommend it. If your sales team is able to adopt something like that and have their calls recorded, you as a marketer can then go and listen to those actual sales calls. So, to the question, Megan, about, how every sales prospect is different, you can start to listen to those calls and start to understand those buckets of problems and challenges that your customers are having, and start to, also take that language directly from the customer and put that into your messaging. Another tool that is pretty cool to check out is Winter with a Y, so WYNTER. Hey, Cyrus, how's it going? It's essentially you can create your own panels. So you tell them, hey, I want B2B marketing managers in these types of companies, for example, and they'll go out and find those people, who you can ask a series of questions, whether it's about a product messaging or a website or similar situations like that, and get feedback directly from your audience, right? So there are now tools that allow you to empower you as a marketer to go out and get that qualitative feedback, so then if you don't have access to it internally, you can source it directly from the prospects that you're trying to reach and speak to.
Yeah. Thanks, Jarrett.
I'd be remiss also if I didn't mention Hotjar. I love Hotjar. Not getting paid for this, but if you don't have Hotjar, it's a super easy way to collect user voice data.
Definitely. One quick note on Gong: all of the transcripts are searchable too. So if you
that's critical.
Calls, you can toss in. I went and searched the word problem the other day, and like every time anybody said problem in a call, like, well, our problem is, and just like talk about value. It's amazing. So we're not getting paid by Gong for that, but just throwing it out there. Data junkies. So point number 3, so we can keep this thing moving. Weak systems and processes. It is so easy to fall prey to this, because you get in, you start doing your job, and you focus on the day-to-day, and then you're putting out a fire here and you're putting out a fire there, and then you have to hire, and then now you're putting out your junior marketers' fires in addition to your own fires, and then leadership is putting fire on you. There's fire everywhere, and you're just sitting there with your coffee saying this is fine. So it's really, really tough to not to have the time to think, to just sit and think and design processes or systems around how you execute your marketing operations, or how you design strategy and communication internally, communication externally, putting together your processes around testing and optimizing, reviewing reports with junior team members, training junior team members. It's really, really difficult to do. But if you aren't able to find the time or resources, from other people that have found the time, then weak systems and processes it's just like you're basically stacking all of these things on a table with legs that are going to crack and break, and everything's going to spill off. So lots of pictures and analogies there, but
so on that, I guess this might be a theme of the way that I think in general, but when you say systems and processes, that's a big, broad conversation. You could spend a whole year or two like revamping all of your systems and processes. But also consider small processes that could make a big difference. So if you can find like a small, addition or adjustment to a process and really drill it home, because the problem with process is like you got to keep reminding people over and over again until it becomes like a super habit. So trying to do a big, broad process overhaul, I think can get quite frustrating. But if you can identify one small process, that would be quite good. So an example might be to do a little bit of keyword research and like optimizing content pages before like a blog post, a webinar post, whatever. Just make it part of that process. It's like, before you sit down to edit it, do some keyword research, identify your target, incorporate it within the headline, build a link to the page, and all of a sudden by doing that, you're dramatically increasing the chances that that piece of content is going to pull organic traffic. And once your writer or whoever's posting that learns those steps, they can just start doing it. It'll take them an extra 30 minutes each time. But now all of a sudden your content has got wheels under it. You know?
Yeah.
And just to add that, I think you can start process pretty simply, right? So you can start simply by creating a Google Doc or a Word doc and writing it down as you go. Like, what are the steps? What are you doing? I think back to when we started our podcast.
Jerry, you're breaking up there.
Marketing at Web Mechanics. Can you guys still hear me?
Yep.
You
Little
were just
choppy.
saying when we started.
When we started our podcast, 3-Minute Marketing, we just laid it all out on the Google Doc. Here's what we do, step one, and then once we had that process down, that we could then follow for each episode, right? So start simple, start small, start with the Google Doc, the roughest possible template, get it to a place where it's serviceable. And then from there, you can move it into a project management system to get it more codified with your organization.
Yeah. And Megan Webster, great point. Taking it to the next level though with slide decks. Don't raise the bar too far. Okay. But I love that with tips and links and things like that. So if you're providing these for training for junior marketers, then being able to provide links and screenshots and step-by-steps, or for VAs or anybody external, this is super helpful. To be able to show them like, this is exactly what it's going to look like. And then, here's a link to like troubleshooting. Here's a link to like a Loom video, things like that. Definitely, if you don't use Loom videos for processes, it's a nice addition. It does sometimes take some extra time, but if you're doing it, then sometimes it's easier to just do it all with a recording and then have somebody else write out the steps in a doc. So save yourself a little time.
Hey, very quick question, just out of curiosity, if you could drop in the chat, what do you guys use for project and task management? Do you use like Asana or Basecamp or just like a big spreadsheet with Google Drive? Okay.
Lots of Asanas.
All right, nice.
Anybody using Teamwork? Yeah, I'm a teamwork junkie. I like a
anybody just not using anything, or just kind of spreadsheet or manually? Interesting.
Yeah, a lot of planner stuff.
Cool. All
right.
Good to know.
Yeah, that's isn't that the truth though? It's so sad.
Cool.
Awesome. Well, one thing I would say, as far as like for those that have not necessarily, I've got a lot of different processes to map out, or a lot of different systems to create. Generally, I like to, for prioritization, I like to think of it in terms of impact on revenues. Okay, if I had to decide between like, okay, what's our email marketing SOP, what's our Google Ads SOP, what's our SOP for handling negative reviews, whatever. Just look at wherever the most revenue is coming from, start with that. And maybe, for email marketing, you're probably going to have a lot of different process documents for, here's how you do, create a drip sequence. Here's how you, broadcast promotions or whatever. But just something to hopefully narrow it in, because it seems like some of these things should be common sense when you hear it, but when you're in the weeds all day, common sense is somewhere up in the trees. So
yeah, one last thing before we move on. So Ryan, to your point about recording your process first, a tool I really like to use for that is Loom. Drop that in the chat here. It's loom.com. It's free. There's a very cheap paid version if you want it, but you can just jump in there, record what you're doing on your screen, and then that can be your V1, right? And then eventually you can hand that off to someone to record in a Google Doc, and then you kind of take it from there. But it's super lightweight and super easy to just record and configure. Michaela, yes, I love your shameless throwback. Yeah, you can just start creating videos. And if a picture is worth 1,000 words, and video is how many exponentially times that, right? So yeah, definitely recommend it for making your processes more easy to digest across the board. Michaela did have a question I want to make sure we tackle before we move on, Brian. It was on any tips for taking those user voice findings, so back to the user voice question, and doing some rapid prioritization to make sure things are actionable, but balance between quick fix and long-term strategy.
Yeah, that's a good question. So let me have this, pull this up so I've got this in writing and okay. So yeah, I think balancing between quick fix and long-term strategy on user voice findings. So there are things that are going to be, Michaela, do you want to elaborate just a little bit on like an example, or just so that I make sure I'm not misunderstanding?
Yeah, I guess, so we'll often get like really quality insights from a conversation with a customer, and that could be a new customer or somebody we've worked with for a long time. Mm-hmm. And that could depend on, entering a new potential capability work stream or developing new ways of delivering. Mm-hmm. So fundamental changes, but things move so quickly. I mean, we're in the IT industry and we're professional services. So it's not like we're developing products and using that to kind of inform our priorities. Mm-hmm. So rapid prioritization, quick action, and not just getting distracted by shiny objects, being able to act on both strategic and, quick fixes is one of the things we struggle most with, the prioritization. So just curious if you got any tips or things that you could share, or maybe a future session that we could talk through those things.
Yeah, well, you were breaking up a little bit, but I think I caught the majority of that. So, it's my connection's breaking up. My bad. So what what my mind goes to in scenarios like that is, again, it all comes back to the money, right? So, when it comes to revenue, retention is going to be the most important thing. So any insight toward improving the customer experience, improving things that will affect retention is going to be your number one priority. If there are additional capabilities that would be like just absurdly easy to implement, like nothing comes to mind of things that are easy to implement, as far as new services, but, something that's just a quick, like, line of code or two, then you can do things like that and then distribute to your existing client base, and that's another good way to increase revenue. But always focus on retention first, as far as customer insight, and then for like prospect insight, things that affect close rates in sales. So if they have objections, if they have problems that aren't being addressed in the sales conversation, you'll want to address that, or if there are features or functionalities that your services, well, features functionality, that's more software. So if your services aren't addressing certain issues that they have, and they're looking for more of like a one-stop shop, and that's something that's relatively easy to fix, you can focus on that. But always follow the revenue, really. So retention first, close rates next, and then probably conversion rates, and however it's going to impact the revenue flow and accelerate pipeline.
Yeah, and Ryan, this actually reminds me of a tool we use for at Web Mechanics for conversion rate optimization testing, which is basically a test matrix where we prioritize. So say we have a universe of 10 different potential tests we could do on a website. What we'll do is we'll then what we call stack rank and prioritize those based on the potential impact of the test versus the level of effort from a technical, creative standpoint, and so forth. So you could do something similar with user voice findings. You could say, hey, based on our user voice data, we have these hypotheses about how to improve these processes in our business and our marketing. And then you can go through the process of stack ranking them. How many resources will this take to pull off? Human resources, technical resources, so forth, creative resources. And ultimately, that'll provide you with a list of, hey, we can do these things 1, 2, 3, and net have the biggest impact, and then move forward from there.
Yeah, Jared, that's a great point. You could score each one in like 1 through 5 in cost to your company, and then value to the company, and then basically eliminate any of the high cost, low value, and then put on the back burner any high cost, high value, unless the value is just absurd. And then to start with the low cost, high value, and then maybe move to low cost, low value if it's worth it. So Chris,
I would add one other column to that spreadsheet, which is confidence.
Yes.
So if you've heard it once or twice from like a small client, low confidence. If you hear it every other day, high confidence.
Yeah, that's a great point. So I used to, I was one of the first 1,000 certified customer experience professionals. Got a good friend that trains people on passing the exam, and I was like, oh, I'll do this. And I was like, wow, I'm actually really passionate about customer experience. Cool. So one of the things that they suggest is to, when you're looking at qualitative data, customer insights, segment your customer base and look at segment it to the top 20%, 80-20 principle, those that produce the most revenue for you, or have been with you the longest, or whatever shows them to be the most quote valuable to the organization. Take their insight as higher value, and then maybe like you've got a brand new customer. Well, okay, so that insight is good to know. We'll log that away. But to Chris's point, 100 customers going to speak a lot louder than one customer.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
awesome, great tips, guys. Thanks.
Yeah, no, thanks for asking that question. It's a good one. Also, I wanted to point out real quick before moving to point 4, that Tim Ferriss has this book, Tools of the Titans. And I think that Jarrett is proving himself the Titan of tools. So my dad joke brain just wanted to throw that out there. So number 4, we see a lot of weak or narrow offers as a growth killer. So Chris and I have been talking about this a lot lately. Offers are really how you present your solution to the market. It's one of the most important pieces of communication you can provide to show how well you understand the customer's problem, and to show how credible you are as an expert in solving that problem. And so how you structure your solution, how you present your solution, how you present the pricing, how you distribute the messaging around it, makes a really big difference. And a lot of people just kind of focus on like driving traffic to their site, and everything is just like, here it is, here's our offer, we have this product, or we have this service. And there's no real thought about how it's presented. And, of course, the larger you grow, you can't be like testing new and different offers around products and services. But what you can do is test different ways of presenting that. No intention, Ashara. It's good. It's a good point. There's no focus on what the customer wants when they get to your site, or when you get on the phone with them or whatever. It's all about you and your service, or you and your product. And you're not offering them what they want. You're saying, we have this, and just making it available. So subtle difference, but important.
Yeah, and I would say I came up as a search marketer. And the joke, like an SEO walks into a bar, comma, pub, comma, watering hole, comma, lounge. So, so in the early days of my career, if you asked me to write a headline, it would be like the keyword, like human resource software or whatever it was, right? But then I got into Dan Kennedy, I got into copywriting and direct response style. So you can blend those two. It's very much an art and a science to blend like SEO, SEM friendly, sort of keyword driven stuff. But if you're not into like Dan Kennedy or Frank Kern or Ryan, I know you know a lot of these like hard-nosed direct response marketers, like they have some really next level techniques. Their style is probably more aggressive than most of you guys would want to get. But they have like tested headline formulas, and like if you go to copyblogger.com, that's a really good. But copy, I love copy. I think copy is like a really underrated skill set, because a lot of these things that we're talking about in terms of strategy and knowing the customer are like table stakes for a good copywriter. Like a good copywriter won't really start writing until they have a really firm grasp of that.
Yeah, that's honestly, if there's one marketing skill that I think every marketer needs to know, it's copywriting, because it kind of encompasses all of the others and affects all of the others. If you're a excellent copywriter, then customer understanding and research is part of your process and mindset. You want to live, breathe, eat, sleep, and dream about your customer's problem and how to walk them through the steps of understanding that, implicating the pain so that they understand, what's going to happen if they don't solve it, and then, go for the close. Eugene Schwartz, if you have not read, and of course, now the name of the book eludes me.
Breakthrough Advertising.
Thank you. Breakthrough Advertising. It was a meaty book, so heavy. It's an older book, and a lot of people don't like to read it for a lot of the older advertising examples. It just may be a bit, off-putting to the less manipulative mind. It's kind of the whole Mad Men era of copywriting. But in terms of copywriting done right, principles of copywriting, that book is, from my experience, second to none. There's a lot of good books out there. This is one of the books that just changed the face of marketing. So if you get the chance, check it out for sure.
Yeah, and there's like, you could spend your entire life studying copywriting probably and still learn stuff, but there's like there's the 80-20 rule. So for instance, like the headline's the most important part. Chances are like that's the only thing everybody's going to read. So if you have an hour to spend writing copy, spend like most of it on that headline, right? If you got to run a test, like test that headline first thing. So there's that. There's a concept of like breaking state. Like you want to kind of, sound like the first job is to get attention. So if the headline on your page is one of these like integrated, cohesive, strategic, buzzwordy AF, like value prop, you know, then like that people are numb to that kind of stuff versus like, here's 7 reasons not to hire. Like if you say, here's 7 reasons not to buy from us right now, that might not position you the way you want, but it's probably going to get read and be like, not to, because it's a break of that state. It's like, hold up, not to hire me? What do you mean? Don't you want us to hire, you know?
Yeah, it's what they call pattern interrupt, right?
Pattern interrupt, right.
Yep. That's taught a lot in neurolinguistic programming of, you know, we're all going through these subconscious routines all day. And if you have a pattern that you know your customer is going to be in, and you give them something just completely out of left field. Frank Kern actually talks about this a fair bit. In marketing, you can totally you know, get their attention, break them out of that, and have them like stop and stare at your content for a minute, which is nice. But then if you can show that you understand their situation and walk them through and maintain that attention, you know, that's the real skill and benefit from copywriting. So,
you know, where the best place to learn copywriting is the checkout aisle in the grocery store where all of like the tabloids and headlines are. The people that write that copy get paid a ton of money, and they know all about pattern interrupts.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's a good point. You know, maybe use different imagery if you're doing ads, but
yeah, me too, Ashara.
Mm-hmm.
I like to read the copy.
Oh, yep, it's good. So yeah, I mean, we introduced this point as offers and then shifted to copywriting, but really, I don't think they're very different. You know, I think that all of the focus of copywriting or all of the focus of an offer is made better through good copywriting. One thing I wanted to point out, so a lot of traditional marketing for quite a while, I say traditional marketing, a lot of digital marketing for the last several years, what's become traditional in digital marketing around offers has been like, okay, well, you know, we've got to give them a lead magnet. You know, we have to give them then some sort of tripwire offer, you know, or you know, maybe in a lot of B2B, it's like, well, we need to give them a demo or a free trial or something. And then, you know, you give them the core offer, profit maximizers, whatever. In B2B, this kind of flow isn't super helpful. So what a lot of people think is like, okay, well, if I give them a lead magnet, like, you know, an ebook or a white paper, you know, and they download that, then they're in my funnel, and I can move them down. But to Ashara's point earlier, you know, there's no intention in that other than, you know, the person downloading the ebook wanted the information. They don't necessarily want your product. So, you know, if they want to learn something, then just teach them that. And honestly, an ebook's not the best format for doing that unless the person just loves to read. Like, show them a 2-minute video that explains the same thing, and you're going to save them a lot of time, which is more valuable. But, you know, if you've already got the ebook, you know, I wrote a book and it sucks to write books, so just, you know, use it. But the point is that, you know, really, unless your offers are your non like close the core offer, the core sale offer, you know, like your download this offer or your, you know, get a free trial offer, unless that can easily prove intent to buy at some point, it's not actually like a macro conversion. It's not even necessarily a good micro conversion that indicates that they're on the path to purchase. So this, again, making good offers outside of your buy this offer really comes down to understanding the customer, understanding their pain, understanding their journey, and being able to track as you guide them along that journey.
Ryan, what's the value equation? I think it's like dream outcome plus likelihood of achieving.
Mm-hmm.
So that's marketing's job, is to sell the dream and the likelihood divided by,
yeah,
what was it?
divided by the cost and or the effort and sacrifice, and the time delay.